What's up, barbecue fans? We're talking pellets today. My name's Jake. You're watching Run and Cook. Today on the channel, we're talking about pellets. This is one of the most common questions I see recently in the last few months, especially because several months ago in one of my videos, actually two of them, I think I talked about doing a pellet test. And let me tell you, I did do that test. In fact, I did it 3 times and I spent about 40 hours on it. I was actually not going to put out the video. And I'll get into the reasons why as we kind of break this down, but a couple disclaimers first. Number one, I am not trying to take away anybody else's experiences or anything like that. There's a lot of other pellet tests out there and people were able to come up with their own answers. And you know, my experiences were far different. And I'm not trying to discredit any of those, and I just want to get that out of the way. The barbecue community on YouTube is great and passionate about their products, and there's a lot to be learned, and everyone's sharing, and I don't want to take away from any of that. Number two, I want to be totally transparent with you guys and let you know that as of about 2 weeks ago, I did become a Bear Mountain Pellets ambassador, and that'll be the brand that I'll be using going forward. But I'll also tell you how that happened. So let's get into this, and I'll give you an idea of how I did it. Test number 1 was a failure. Okay, and here's where my mistake was. For all these videos, I went to Costco and I got a full pork loin and I cut it into exactly 2 inches, got out my tape measure and I went through and I just cut all the pieces equally. I cooked that 2-inch pork loin on the top shelf, on the Yoder, at 225. It took a couple hours and I cooked them till they were 150. And then what I did is I had my sous vide going and I had it set at 150 and I put the meat in there. That way when I tasted all the pork, it was all the same temperature. That was really my goal. I wanted to keep things as even as possible. And what I did is I was only putting in like 2 cups of pellets. So by the time it was cooked, I was almost empty. So if there was a lot left, I was just scooping them out till I could see the auger, and then I would change over pellets. I let it run for about 20 minutes so I knew I was on the new pellets, and then we go through it again. And as you can imagine, when you're trying 67 pieces, 12, 14 hours at 2 hours a piece. The first go round, the mistake I made is that I didn't let the pork cool down. I threw it in the sous vide right away. So the next, when I was done, it actually ended up being very late that night, and I tried a whole bunch of horribly dry pork. I couldn't even swallow it. It was a huge mistake. So there was a good lesson learned on that one. So obviously scrapped that video. The next week, this time I did the exact same process, and what I did is I set up my sous vide and I let all the pork come down to room temperature before I vacuum sealed it. And then I put it in my sous vide, and then I did the same thing with the last one, and then I let them all sit for a minimum of an hour. I wanted them to all be up to the 150, my target temperature. And I did that for the next 2 tests. Pork was tender, it was actually pretty delicious. Learned a good way if I want to keep pork tender and flavorful for a long time. The sous vide really helped out. First time I kind of used it that way, so that was good to learn. So the tests weren't all useless. Now we'll talk about the tests. Here's what I learned. I went through it the first time and I went through all the brands, and I found it very easy to kind of pick out which ones were the least smoky, at least the front half. And then as I got to the last half, it got a little bit more difficult, but I went through it once and I'm like, all right, I got my winner. And the way I did it is I had these white plastic plates and I drew numbers on them. So on the bottom, you know, I cut them up and then I put them on the table and I mixed them all up. So I couldn't figure out which was which. And then I could tell by that number which one I tried. And I got to the end of it and I was like, all right, I've got my top 3. More importantly, I only really cared about the top 2. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I can do that again. So I went through the same process and I mixed up the top 2. Went through it again, mixed up the top 2. So And not only just the top two, but I started to mix up the other ones as well. I could not get everything in order every single time. I was like, you know what? I'm not happy with this video. I want to make sure that I've got some more concrete answers. So what I did is I got my wife involved. And then I did it all again. I tried cheese, water, bread between pieces. I let her do it, and neither one of us could reproduce our results. The problem was, once we got a little bit of smoke on our tongue, it was very, very hard to distinguish the other levels. I mean, the lower ones were quite easy. And I'm going to go over some smoke notes with you, and the notes kind of speak for themselves, but what I did is I came out every 20, 30 minutes, and I just looked at the smoke, right? Smoke doesn't lie. Wanted to get an idea of what it was doing, and we'll go over my smoke notes in a second, but even my wife, the first time through, she thought she had a dead-on winner, and then I took the top two, and I let her try them back to back, and she was trying to drink something in between, and she couldn't do it. I have not seen anyone do it back to back a bunch of times. I've just seen everyone go through it once. Maybe no one thought about going through it multiple times, but I wanted to make sure if I was going to put it in a video and give you guys a pellet recommendation that I had done some tests, and I could it was a repeatable process for me. And listen, I'm not, some people can go and they can taste wine and they can go, oh, well, the chocolate and the hint of spice, a little bit of cherry curd, and then, that's not me, right? I don't have that well-defined taste bug. But I like some smoke, and I love me some meat, and I love me some pork, so I was like, you know what, I should be able to get to the bottom of this. I could not. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share with you my smoke notes. There's my phone here. Barbecue Delight, all right? I got them all hickory. They're all, as you can see, they're all hickory. I wanted to be able to compare apples to apples. Smoker Delight. This is actually the brand that Yoder uses in their testing when they program all their electronics and all that good stuff. And I've been using this brand since day one. Happy with it. Haven't had any problems with it. But people ask you about pellets, and they kind of ask you what other brands have you tried, and it just makes sense to try some other brands. So I have, and then all of a sudden we're in our smoke test. But if I look at Barbecue Delight, as a general rule, when I came out to look at it, it was a very light smoke every time. Didn't see any heavy smoke at all. There was a fair amount of smoke, but it was very, very light. So I would call it more of a continuous light smoke. Bear Mountain. I called this smoke here was medium to heavy. So depending when I came out, there was always smoke there, it was always medium, but several times when I came out, it was heavy. And we went to cooking pellets. And cooking pellets. I found that these guys had very consistent smoke, and it varied light to medium. Kingsford. Obviously, you guys know that these guys have been in the charcoal game for a while. Now they're doing pellets. There are some rumors that Lumberjack makes their pellets. But when you look at their pellets compared to Weber, well, I don't know if it's going to come across in camera, but much lighter for the Weber and much thinner in diameter. When you look at Lumberjack, they're thinner in diameter like the Weber, so I'm wondering if maybe they make the Weber ones. But the Lumberjack, or sorry, the Kingsford, again, it was thin to medium. Lumberjack, we were medium to heavy. Most times when I came out, it was heavy smoke. More often than not, I would say that there was heavy smoke when I came out. Not too often was there medium smoke. And when I look at these two, again, they're very, very similar in the diameter, but the Weber is actually way lighter. So maybe that's because Lumberjack uses a little bit of bark on theirs. Tough to say. Then we've got the Weber Smoky Mountain, or sorry, Smoke Fire pellets, and they were continuous light smoke. There was medium to heavy at times, but it was often more on the light side. And then I had the Traeger hickory, which I don't have the bag of. I just burned through them in some high temps cooks. They were light, and in the score test they were in the bottom half. But Lumberjack, Bear Mountain, and Kingsford were my top 3, with these 2 almost interchangeably being 1 and 2, constantly amongst all the tests. I couldn't really line up below that, but these 2 stuck out as my winners, and which leads me to, hey, you know, how'd you become a Bear Mountain ambassador? Very simple. Obviously, I wanted to make sure that I was working with a pellet that I appreciated and liked. So I narrowed it down to the top 2 of the smoke test. I reached out to both the companies and asked about being an ambassador. That was it. Bear Mountain replied actually quite quickly and super easy to work with. Lumberjack, unfortunately, I never heard a response from. But I did reach out to both and wanted to learn how each program worked and what the opportunities were. And I'm happy to say that I'm now a Bear Mountain ambassador, so that's the product you're going to see on the channel. But you know, these top 3, these are really what I learned from my tests that I like that had the most smoke. So that's the video that I almost didn't do, but because you asked for it so often, I wanted to kind of share it with you. I didn't really want to do a talking video. I wanted to kind of show you some results. And I actually deleted all the footage, which in hindsight I probably should have kept, because I did have a little bit of footage of smoke, although it was hard to keep or to catch. But when I couldn't come to a definitive answer, I just kind of figured the video would go off and be forgotten about. But it has been asked about a lot, so there you go. You guys ask and you succeed, or you ask and you will receive. On that note, if you look at my comments below, now I'm just pinning a comment that says what kind of video you want to see next. I really want to show you guys content that you want to see rather than me just winging it and going along with cooks. Obviously there's some experiments and certain cooks that people like to see, but there's definitely some things that you guys probably are just curious about and you want to learn about. So if you've got something that you want to see, put them in the comments below. I'm going to try and make a list, and I'm trying to knock out some of the more common, popular videos that you guys want to see. You can see over here if it's on, there's painter's tape on my Kamado, working on an interesting video about the gasket over there, and going to keep on working through some other topics. So that's all I've got for you today. Thanks as always for watching. If you like what you saw, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed yet, why the hell not? I'll see you soon.